Hello and welcome to Finextra. I'm Josie Waite and I'm here with Margaret Doyle from Deloitte, and we are talking about blockchain and fintech. Margaret, thank you for joining me.
It's a pleasure.
Where do you think fintechs are likely to be most successful within financial services?
Well, we think that clearly there are opportunities across financial services for fintechs, perhaps most profoundly over time in insurance, but most immediately in banking. So let's take a closer look at banking as we've done. We do expect to see disruption in banking. We expect to see the value chain being kind of torn apart. We think that that's going to happen most profoundly in payments. That's partly because payments are a big revenue generator for the banks, but also because, of course, payments carry within them a lot of very valuable data that tech companies are adept at using and would like to get their hands on. So yes, we think payments is already one of those very hot areas for fintech. We took a look at lending. We expected when we looked at peer-to-peer lending that would also sort of have the same pattern, which is, in other words, that these new forms of lending would disrupt banks. The conclusion we came to is that yes, it's very exciting, but it's more likely to be a sustaining innovation rather than to disrupt banks. And that's because we do think that banks have a fundamental funding cost advantage. Now, the only thing that we think that could really threaten banks going forward is this big open banking initiative. It's an initiative at the moment here in the United Kingdom. It builds upon PSD2, the revised Payment Services Directive that has come out of the European Union. And both of them have as their ambition opening up banks, and basically it undermines some of those historic sources of competitive advantage that banks have in terms of the proprietary access to data, and in particular to real-time and historic transaction data, which of course gives an insight into credit risk. So we think open banking offers an opportunity for fintechs to come in, to use that data that historically has been owned by banks, and to offer lots of other services, budgeting, perhaps payment services on the back of that kind of infrastructure that is owned and run by the banks themselves.
What are the main applications for blockchain in financial services?
So we think that blockchain is very exciting. However, where I think we differ from the mainstream is that there's a huge amount of excitement around cryptocurrencies in particular, of which, of course, the most famous example is Bitcoin. Now, we have some reservations about whether cryptocurrencies will really take off. They do perform some of the functions of money well, as an exchange of value, as a means of exchange. However, we don't necessarily think that they're good as a store of value. We've seen that with cryptocurrencies, that their value is very volatile. But we are excited about blockchain for other uses. We think that, for example, in the whole area of digital identity, that blockchain could provide a solution or provide an alternative to current means of verification, which tend to be paper or plastic based. And they offer sort of great advantages. So, for example, at the moment when you share an identity, you tend to have to reveal quite a lot about yourself. Whereas in future, using blockchain, it should be possible to just reveal the element of identity that needs to be verified. We also think that there are going to be applications for blockchain in the capital markets. Some perhaps front office applications, for example, with smart contracts, but actually more profoundly, probably in the back office, in areas like clearing and settlement, where there can be lots of inefficiencies, there can be lots of rework, and we think that blockchain there could introduce a lot of efficiencies and a lot of cost cutting.
How are innovative financial services firms making use of data and analytics?
So we think that this is a very exciting area, the whole area of data and analytics, which frankly companies are only beginning to explore. And we think that there are two types of advantage that data and analytics can bring to the market. So on the one hand, we believe that it can help the providers of financial services, and on the other hand, we think that it can help the consumers of financial services. So just looking at the providers, we think that the data and analytics will help the providers to better price risk. So whether that's a bank trying to work out whether to lend to a small company, and if so, what sort of interest rate to charge, whether it's an insurer trying to work out risk, or whether perhaps it's an investment manager using robo-advice tools to help them to understand a customer better and perhaps to provide financial advice, investment advice to a customer with a lot less income than is possible today, a lot less wealth than is possible today. So definitely we see kind of huge gains in efficiency and in risk pricing for financial services incumbents. On the other hand, we also think that it's very exciting for customers. So on the retail banking side, one can imagine, and already we're seeing, budgeting tools. So using analytics to help customers understand their own budgets, but also to understand how their spending patterns compare and contrast with those of other individuals, and perhaps nudging them to be better at spending and better at saving. But perhaps the most exciting area is in insurance. At the moment, insurance has traditionally been largely about basically trying to make people whole after they've suffered in some way. The future for insurance is to mitigate risk and perhaps even to prevent risk. We have got some very exciting tools ourselves, Hex Score and Hex Auto, which are all about gathering data, be it internal company data or external open data like the weather or like traffic patterns, and trying to say to people, this is how you can make this journey safer for you and to avoid accidents, which of course is what we all want.
Margaret, thank you.
It's been a pleasure.
And thank you for watching.